My name is Bert J. Hash, Jr. My background is that, I grew up in Maryland, but I was born in North Carolina and lived a period of time in West Virginia. My father was a coal miner, and he got laid off, and we came to Maryland in the late 50s. I ended up getting educated here in the city of Baltimore at Morgan State University, where I met my wife of 43 years, Joan. I began my career in the banking industry, bad word, banking industry, but I spent 15 years working for one bank and then 12 years for another bank, both of them on the retail side. I ran branches and then was in mortgage banking most of my career. I had an opportunity because of my involvement with contacts with individuals. I met the chief of staff here at that time for the Baltimore City under Mayor Schmoke's administration. Lynette Young was her name. We had met because I was involved in an organization, and periodically she would tell me about positions that were open because I was supposedly knowledgeable about people in the industry and that I could refer to them. And she told me about this particular position, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I would like to apply for it." And I was fortunate enough to be able to apply and get an opportunity to get my dream job, becoming the CEO about 17 and a half years ago.
So what year was it that you started?
In 1996, December 23rd, 1996. So I'm coming up on the 18th year.
And had you known much about the credit union model before coming here? Or?
Well, as a part of my interview, I told them that I had been a credit union member as long as I've been in the financial services industry, because I had belonged to a credit union. Security Plus is called now. It's the Social Security Administration. My wife worked there, and so there were many times when we had to make a decision on where we were going to be able to take care of lending products that the credit union would lend out based on the rates to charge, even though I got somewhat favorable rates as an employee of banks at the time.
And so making that transition from working in banks to municipal credit union, how did were there any kind of obvious differences kind of as you moved from one environment to the other?
Well, no. Challenges. People look at the transition and say, "Didn't you have a tough time with the transition?" Well, the first day I walked in to the credit union industry, I did what I generally did at the branch that I ran for one bank. I spent that, and I was pick paper up off the floor. I was sent here to do a job, and it was credit union was more suited to my skill set at that time because it was really based on the retail side. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed trying to help people, and their motto of people helping people just really fit into my DNA. I saw an opportunity to do the same things that I typically did many years ago when I ran a branch. We had at that time one branch, 50,000 members, 7 tellers. So you can imagine that was a challenge to be able to give service, and I believe in giving service to people. I enjoyed that about the banking environment. Although I wasn't a branch manager, but a portion of my time I enjoyed that the most, interacting with people. So in my estimation, coming in and working with a board of directors to carry out their vision, the actual work was not something that I wasn't aware of, and I could see myself doing that.
And how did the sort of working with the board is kind of interesting in that you guys have a paid board where that's kind of a different model than most credit unions, which have the volunteer board. What are your thoughts on the kind of relative benefits or pros and cons of those different models?
Okay, and I'll just let me say a few words about the board fairly quickly. In selecting me as their employee, they gave me an opportunity to carry out their vision, and I know in the interview that I had with them, I said, well, as your CEO, how will you empower me to carry out their vision? And they said, educate us and we will follow. Generally, that's not necessarily what the direction is the board normally leads, but at that time they established a partnership because they wanted to know the changes. They brought me in because I had the expertise to make the changes, but they wanted to know what the changes were so that they could approve the changes, because they did have some tremendous changes that had to be done. When we talk about a paid board, it's only about 8 states, I think, that have paid boards of credit unions. So the board of directors are paid. I feel that certainly many of them that came on board did not know that they received compensation or honorariums, as you will. And I think you'll find that these people are just as dedicated to the membership, whether they got paid or not, that they would be here working on behalf of the members. Certainly Chairman Williams, as you can see, really believes in the membership, believes in the credit union, believes in people helping people, and you find that most of his life he's been involved in a career that has had him working in the public service and trying to help and assist people. In fact, he's still employed now. He's 82 years old, and 4 days out of the week he's the chief of the assessment board for Baltimore City. So you can see that they do that, and I can look at all the board members. They're dedicated to their job and to their roles, respective roles, because they represent a part of the membership that they would do it without being compensated.
And so this credit union, having its original kind of common bond being the municipal employees, how does it currently relate to the city of Baltimore?
Well, we definitely have a great relationship with the city of Baltimore, and each administration we try to make sure that we shore that up in talking to the members. But most of them, the former mayors were members of the credit union, so they had their own vested interest. We certainly are providing financial services and products and access for the members who eventually are our members. When I say they're members, they're employees that are for the city. We also have their families that are involved in that, as well as the retirees. So that was the initial, although it was this select employee groups was the employees, then became the retirees, and then the family members were added. About 15 years ago, we added the entire city through a low-income designation. So if you live, work, worship, or come to school, or go to school here in the city of Baltimore, you become a member. You can become a member of MECU. And then we have additional select employee groups where we didn't have those before. Now, the current administration, the mayor and the city of Baltimore, is where we reside. 2/3 of our employees are residents of the city. 2/3 of our members are still residing in the city, although many of them live in the surrounding counties. So we have, as goes Baltimore City, so does MECU. And we believe in trying to assist in any way that we can, and certainly working with the leadership. A number of the city council are members of MECU. So we believe in trying to support their efforts in making the city a better place to live, or making it the best place to live, I should say.
And what is MECU's relationship with some of the other credit unions in the state of Maryland? How does that? Are you part of the state league, or how does that play out?
Yes. When I first came aboard, the credit union had not been a part of the league for a number of years, and one of the first things that we did was rejoin the league. I didn't know the history, and I quickly found out the history had to do with disintermediation of the savings loan crisis that we had, where we were required to wasn't required, but we decided to get become federally insured instead of state insured or share insured. And there was some friction at that time regarding a couple of our board members and the rest of the association, or the league at that time.
So at that time, there was both federal share insurance fund and also like a Maryland state share insurance fund?
Yes.
Okay.
And we still have to this day. I think it's only about 11 credit unions that are involved in that, and it's mostly the smaller credit unions. But 3 of the largest credit unions in the state of Maryland are state chartered credit unions. It was just the state chartered credit unions that could do that, as opposed to the federally insured. Well, we're all federally insured, but federally chartered credit unions.
Mm-hmm.
Getting involved with the association gave me an opportunity, or we could call it association, so I'll keep referring to it as association. Gave me an opportunity to be a part of the governance of that association. I spent 9 years on the board, the last one as chairman of the credit union. So we share a good relationship with the credit unions. I like to think so. We're one of the largest ones in the state. We're actively involved in all of the outreaches of the credit union. We pay our dues on time, and we participate by sending our individuals, our team members, to be a part of the advocacy, whether it's national or state, as well as the education programs that we have. So we're one of the biggest supporters. We normally send the most people to the conferences, and we don't not only send management and the board, but we send rank and file as well, from teller, call center reps. We send along. We try to get everybody excited about the credit union movement.
And in terms of engaging with the membership, one of the ways in which credit unions have kind of traditionally made loans, kind of made credit, is having, you have the sort of more objective credit criteria, but you also have kind of questions, criteria of character and things like that. Has MECU been able to sort of, as it's grown, use those sorts of criteria, or has it been something where as it's gotten larger, it's more kind of relied upon kind of credit scores and things like that for the loan banking process?
Well, just a little background. When I first came to MECU 17 years ago, 80% of the loans were unsecured. We didn't have very many vehicle loans or mortgages here at MECU. And we had what we refer to as cosigner loans. So 3-4 individuals could get together and cosign for each other, which meant the extension of credit. They were all responsible, and I'll use the school system as an example. You could have principal, vice principal, a teacher, and a secretary signing on loans for each other, and you would get your maximum just based on the fact of the tenure in the school system or tenure for the city of Baltimore. Unfortunately, if all 3 of them left, those loans would fall on you. So the lowly reception could be responsible for a significant debt, much greater than what they have in income to be paid. We did change that 20%. The unsecured loans are about less than 20% of what we do, but it is a product that continues to serve our members well, because they needed the money to live on, to be able to utilize in helping them in their economic evolution. You go from just the savings to buying the personal loan, buying the car, the house, and then sending your kids to college. So it has really benefited our membership. To your point, we have A, B, C, D, E paper that you would reference, and that's what you were talking about. Well, 17 years ago, 55% of it was A and B, and 45% was C, D, and E. Today, 55% is A and B, 45% is C, D, and E. We have a very diversified membership base, going from the mayor throughout all the professions, teachers, people, specialists, firemen, policemen, and the like, down to public works, sanitation workers, and so forth. And they've all had an opportunity to be a member of MECU and to be successful. And we've had our challenges just like everyone else. We will always have, based on who we serve, higher delinquency, maybe more bankruptcies, maybe more losses, but we are able to offset that with the way we continue to try to assist and help our members through credit counseling, home ownership programs, and the like. We continue to do a lot of reach out. Believe in financial literacy, very supportive of financial literacy programs, and stay involved in it, and have gotten recognition or recognized with a number of Laura Maxwell, Louise Herring awards, and the award that focus on education for, just trying to remember the name of the individual, but focus on education, financial literacy of membership.
And so So one of the ways your field of membership expanded was through the low income designation.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that, the experience of kind of including those new groups in the credit union community?
Well, it's amazing when you talk about including new groups. We were, as a city employer, our members were employed. And then you get to the family members who may not work for the city of Baltimore, but they still are, they reside or work someplace else, and they may not make the wages that the city employees. Well, when you look at the city of Baltimore, our members were already in those zip codes, those low-income designated zip codes. So we were serving people with low income and modest means all along. And by getting a designation, it really didn't change who we were, because we were always serving those members. As I think the chairman said, especially in the African-American neighborhoods, the chairman made reference to the fact that he was one of the first in the fire department, and similar police was similar with the integration of both of those fairly big units. Education and segregated school system, but you could still belong to the city employees by teaching in an educated school system. They integrated shortly after 54, 55, or 56, so you did have everyone, at least on education, being involved together. The same with the police and the fire department. It's a total integration of those departments, and people are getting opportunities and chances. Going back to the 50s, with the exception of the finance companies, banks didn't necessarily lend to African Americans, or at least the ones of modest means. And the credit union was the financial institution or the bank for everyone. It didn't mean it didn't matter what the color of your skin is. That was the reason it was created, and it specifically assisted people of low economic means here in the city of Baltimore. And for many of them, whether they were white or black, it was the financial institution. My parents, when I started finding out about finances and so forth, they went to the finance company. They didn't go to the bank. And so that reminded me of a similar type of institution that served people when they couldn't get it served elsewhere. And if you look around now, check cashing and pawn shops are becoming those type of financial institutions that people are going to, because some of the banks and the credit unions as well may not be providing service to them, or at least educating them to move them up so that they can provide additional products and services to them. Those are the fastest growing institutions.
And so, kind of narrowing in a little bit to talk about your sort of personal experience as an African American man, sort of in the financial services sector, and then in the credit union movement. What sort of have you experienced? Any things that you feel like have been sort of unique about your experience, or anything that's going from 60s, 70s, 80s?
Well, we'll start when I decided to. I interviewed for the banking position, and I really had no background in banking. I was just looking for a job, and it was one of the most sound offer I received. And in going to work for the bank, I thought it would be a short time experience, and I would leave to go, and do something else. Didn't know what that was, but do something else. Well, I always wanted to be in management. I want to make the impact. I want to be the boss. I want to be in charge. And that fit in my thought process of becoming a branch manager and being able to do that. And I did that for 4.5 years. I was one of the few African Americans in that training class that I went in. And I was at one time the only branch manager of African American for the Equitable Bank, and they had 60 or 70 branches at that time. So I wasn't the first pioneer, but I was one of the early pioneers in the Baltimore corporate community here in being involved in those positions that typically you didn't see African Americans in. I was fortunate enough to work for a bank that emphasized and had a focus on bringing African Americans into the banking industry, and I met a number of friends who were no longer in the banking industry, but we sort of bonded together and established a couple of organizations that focused on networking and advocating for careers in banking and or the credit union, same way, similar to AACUC, the African American Credit Union Coalition. And that's why I was drawn to that when I first got involved, because of my being involved in the banking industry and having that opportunity. For my career, it was just like any other career. You had to work hard. There were times I thought I had to go through positions or to changes just in reference. You become a full officer. I was always the assistant, then the full officer, then the senior. So it seems like I hit every step that was there. In fact, I thought they created a couple steps for me that people had to go through. But I got an opportunity to work with people that helped me. The people that encouraged me and helped me weren't African Americans, because there were a number of them that were not there. And then I also had some African Americans that mentored me as well. But as you can imagine, when you're a pioneer, there's not many people in the industry, so I didn't have too many people to be able to turn to. Later on, we grew in numbers, and you had more people to be able to talk with. And as I went up my career ladder, I got an opportunity to leave Equitable and go to Provident in a senior position. And they gave me an opportunity. I had a skill set that they needed, and they also gave me an opportunity to get involved in consumer lending, mortgage lending, and the institution. So I became a senior manager in a fairly short period of time. I was bringing income to the bottom line, and they saw that. And by doing that, I had the opportunity to continue to be exposed to the process, to boards, and to being actively involved in the leadership. And so when I got an opportunity to come here, it had already set the stage for me, at least in my mind, that I was prepared to be the CEO. And I will say that working in the credit union industry, the number of other people I've worked with, CEOs I've worked with, have really given me an opportunity to participate in the industry. They encourage me to utilize my skill set, to educate me, to introduce me to others. And that was here in Maryland, but also nationally with the African American Credit Union Coalition. They were well known, people like Helen Godfrey Smith and Michael Hell, and a number of others that encouraged me, also mentored me, and introduced me to other people that gave me an opportunity to grow professionally and personally.
So talking about the coalition, what do you see as kind of like the function and the benefit of and the sort of the importance of the work that the coalition does to you?
Well, for me, I think it's an advocate. It provides advocacy for the credit union movement, specifically of the African American nature, to be able to continue having African American involvement in the leadership role, but also bringing that perspective to on how we can continue to expand the movement, and how we can continue to exist and to help increase. Now, this is a universal movement. I mean, it's not just confined to the United States, and although we're the bigger part of it, it represents so many. It represents everyone, and opportunity for us to bring whatever expertise and assistance that we can, especially with the smaller African American credit unions, to help them continue to exist and to survive, is a focus that we feel that the organization brings to that. I've been involved in the African American internship program, and we've had over 300 interns that have entered the program. And we say 300, and we talk about maybe 12 years, 13 years. You look at that figure, and you talk about students. This is students, the focus on students. they first become members. They also learn the credit union movement, and hopefully they will eventually become an employee of the movement and be able to lend their expertise and their education to the success of the overall movement. We look at that 300 students, and they average between $4,500 to $5,000, and that's a significant amount of income that they receive, and they go back and they educate others about the credit union movement. We've had about 20% of those individuals have started in the movement in some positions. Some of them may start, and I can just tell you about the experience that we've had. Some of them started off as tellers just to get a job. Not only with that, but within the internship program after school, that they didn't have a job, but since they had been working in the internship program, became a teller, and they have moved up to various positions with us when they became available. It's great because they understand the corporate arena, they understand what's needed, what's required, and they can certainly fine-tune their skill set to be a part of the team, to be a success being in the credit union movement and being an employee of the credit union.
So thinking about how the organization has grown since you've come here, what do you see as the sort of the kind of next steps, the goals that you have for it, and the ways that those goals really kind of relate to the sort of the kind of credit union philosophy, the kind of mission of credit unions?
Chairman Williams talked about the establishment of a culture, and I think that when you talk to a number of people from the outside, when they look at MECU, they think about our culture, the corporate culture that we have of giving back and being a part of the community and helping and assisting our membership. They like to say that we're a happy institution because it seems like everyone's happy when they come here, and it's because of the involvement that we have. As he said, with the board and with the staff, we work together as a team, and that certainly is carried out through the rest of the organization. The chairman certainly knows a number of people that on the entry level that he meets and greets and makes them feel a part of the team. Well, the reason I'm saying that, at the end of June, I will be retiring after my 17, 18 years here with this institution. And the concern is about the leadership. But the leadership and the culture, as the chairman says, has been established, so they're not going to change that. So the philosophy of people helping people, and certainly with the board members that I know that will continue being a part of this, the leadership will continue to focus on that type of culture and being inclusive and helping people and being a part of that. Now, what do I see for MECU in the future? We certainly hope to expand our membership through our existing channels that we have with our existing SAGs and family members and the like in the city of Baltimore. But as the chairman indicated, we recently acquired a bank. We've also merged with credit unions, smaller credit unions. And we see ourselves as an institution that's going to be a survivor as the downsizing of the credit unions and the banks continues, that we'll be able to continue the philosophy of people helping people taking over. And they would have to be mutual savings banks. We couldn't take over a stock bank because their structure is similar to a credit union. And that we could acquire them and they could fit into our organization. And so we think that we'll continue to provide the service that we do, continue returning value to all of our members. And as long as we focus on that and continue to keep that at the forefront, then we'll continue to be successful. But it does start with the culture, people caring and giving back.
And what, kind of also just looking out over the credit union movement, are there any trends or any things that you think are going to be challenges for credit unions in coming years? Like what concerns you?
We're getting larger and larger. We have 300 credit unions that are billion, and my concern is that we don't get away from what the initial mission of the credit union movement was. That it continues to be a movement. We have to continue to assist and support the smaller credit unions as they continue trying to survive in an ever-changing environment. we can never forget who we are, and sometimes we wrestle with that when we are in the credit union conversation of the larger credit unions. The helping each other, and the credit unions always being helpful to each other as opposed to seeing each other as competition. For me, there is no credit union that I view as competition. Every time you say something about a credit union, you're talking about MECU. The competition I view, as you can see, being here as you look out the window, of the banks that we have. And that's our competition. So we are competing against them, and we have good relationships with some of the banks as well. But it's financial services, and it's getting to become larger and larger. So not only are the banks, but other entrants into the financial services industry that are going to be very big competitors. Not only big competitors, but you have some of the smaller ones that are coming out of space too. So my concern is the competitiveness. We think is competitive now, but there are companies that are coming into the space that continues to look at financial services as being a great marketplace to make profit. So we'll continue to see that. We just can't lose who we are and why we were created, or we'll evolve into another type of financial institution.
So any final thoughts or reflections or stories about from the history of this organization that you feel like it would be good to share?
MECU has been around 80 years, and it has gone through a number of leaders. We only had 5 chairmen during that 80 years, and certainly Chairman Williams was a visionary in wanting to make some changes because we had got stagnant, and we needed to make some changes. As a large institution, we were falling behind very quickly. He was able to empower me to come in and utilize, along with the rest of the board, my skill set. But they changed too, and they have to continue to change. And what I have to say to this institution and the leaders that continue to reside here, you have to continue to change or you become no longer relevant. And that's for anything that you do. But hopefully we keep the culture that we have of people helping people.